murder my brother in my house, to feel frightened when I'm out in the field and I don't know exactly where all my comrades are, and you don't necessarily have a good way. You've got phones. What good is a phone going to do? And you see settlers moving, and then you hear gunfire. I mean, that's a violence. That's a violence. So that's settler violence. There's soldier violence. Tomorrow's the anniversary of, I was arrested when I was in Palestine, and tomorrow is the anniversary of that event. I was at a demonstration, a Friday demonstration, in a town called Cooper Kadoom. And Cooper Kadoom actually is an excellent example of institutional violence. Because Cooper Kadoom is a place where it's 1.5 kilometers from Nablus. It's like, it's a village, so it's wrong to call it a suburb. But it's a short distance from Nablus. During the Second Intifada, when Nablus was closed, the soldiers encircled and shut down Nablus. They closed the road between Cooper Kadoom and Nablus. And everybody who wanted to go to Nablus still, the soldiers said, or the government said, we'll open it when we open the roads into Nablus. We'll open your road for you. And they didn't. And so this tiny trip, 1.5 kilometers, is going to take people 14, 15 kilometers to do. They have to go down and around and all crazy. And, you think 15 kilometers, well, I mean, that doesn't seem that far. But it's a bit of a way when you think about what the roads are and when you think about how unnecessary that is. And so in order to go see family in Nablus, go to shopping, maybe go to work, you've got to make this big long trip. Instead of making just most direct roads. But they don't keep it open because there's a settlement right next door to Cooper Kadoom that's stolen the name of the town and is Kadoom Settlement, Kadoom Settlement. And so the government and the soldiers feel that it would be too dangerous to the people in the settlement if the road was open. Too dangerous. Because the people who live in that settlement are really the ones who are in danger. Because the people who live in that settlement are the ones who have their town raided by the soldiers every Friday when there's a demonstration and the people ask or demand that their road be open. And it was at some such settlement that a year ago tomorrow, I was with my colleagues, or with my comrades, and Palestinian and international, and we were at one of these Friday demonstrations to open the road. And this is the way a demonstration works. I mean, in the United States, a demonstration works like, we're angry, and then people get tired or whatever, and they go home. In West Bank, people are like, we're angry, and then the soldiers invade the town, and there's like, the soldiers invade the town, then they pull off. The soldiers will come to the outskirts of the town hours before, or even the night before, and kind of set up positions. And what they're basically doing is they're running training exercises with themselves so that they can stay sharp or, I don't know, harassing the Palestinians, I guess. And they wait, and the kids come and they throw stones. And then the soldiers come down the hill, or up the hill, or through the road, or through the other road, and they converge on the town. And there are these little skirmishes, where the soldiers get close, the kids run away, or the soldiers get close, then they back off. And they go like this, and they go like this, and they go like this, until it gets hot, and the soldiers get done with it, and then they invade the town, and then they arrest people. And, or they take pictures if they do that. And then they come back the next night, and then they break into people's houses, and they fire tear gas at them, and then they arrest people who were involved in the demonstration. So I was at a demonstration like this when I'm not a very good runner, and when the soldiers invaded the town, we kind of just couldn't get away because we'd gotten separated. In Cooper-Cadoon, there's a hill, and there's like a road that goes out of town, and the settlement is over there, and sort of the center of the town is over here, and the road sort of curves around, and the main front, where the people are trying to take the road, they're trying to push the road out this way, is separated a ways off. It's easy to get separated. So we've been going back and forth like all the day. The soldiers were on the hill, and we were in such a position that we couldn't see the main march because we were kind of around a corner. We were out at the front, and we could see what was happening here, and there were soldiers spoiling here and soldiers spoiling down the road over here. And we couldn't see the soldiers on the hill because of houses. And then suddenly, the soldiers on the road here invaded and pushed us this way. And we ran this way, and we were separated from the rest of the march. And the soldiers came down the hill and came this way, and we got cut off. And we tried to run into a stable. My international colleagues and I tried to run into a stable, and we got found. And then two of my other colleagues, I tried to run out into a field down kind of toward the south of town, and they got run down. While my colleagues were running, as they were and some of my others they saw soldiers enter the town and start breaking the windows of a house. And it turned out later that they were doing that. They were actually taking two men, two brothers, Majid and Abdelaziz Sabi. They were arresting them. When the soldiers arrested us, they said that as internationals we were throwing stones. We were not throwing stones because it wouldn't have been our place to throw stones. And they said that we were in a closed military zone, which is something that the IDF says that any protest area is. It's now a closed military zone, so people who don't live in the town can't legally be there. So they hauled Majd and Abdelaziz out of their home where one was sleeping and one was having lunch with his wife and his parents, and they put them in the vehicles and they hauled them away with us in blindfolds and handcuffs because they said that they had been at the protest throwing stuff as well. They had not been. We didn't see them. We saw the soldiers go into their house. My comrades did. They weren't dressed for a demonstration. They were not there. They were just taken. Soldier violence, that's a kind of soldier violence. My colleagues and I was arrested with, my comrades and I was arrested with 3 British nationals and myself. Oh, I was arrested with myself. And Majd and Abdelaziz were arrested with us, and they were separated from us, and they were kept in the sun, and they were questioned, and we weren't allowed to get close to them. They were blindfolded, and they were taken away. And we tried to help later to have them be released. One had been arrested months before at a demonstration that he was actually at. And as far as I can surmise now, he's actually still in jail, still in prison. His brother had not been arrested ever before, and he was released a month later by the military court. But to be in prison as an international is not the same thing as to be in prison as a Palestinian. We had rules about how long they could keep us, what they could do with us. The worst they could do would be really to deport us, which they didn't. But there's not an end to administrative detention necessarily for Palestinians. These can just be kept indefinitely, and you don't know. And it's a hard enough thing. I don't know if anybody here has ever been in jail or been in prison for a tiny thing, for like in the county for the weekend, or in jail because of whatever. But it's a hard thing to have your liberty be taken away and not know if and when you're going to get out. And it's an even harder thing to have to deal with, but I'm sure that National Delegates have had to go through. I don't know. Cut it. Soldier violence is also like actually physically violent. When I was there in November during the Gaza war, there were demonstrations around Calamity refugee camp, and soldiers came and they fired tear gas to like stop these demonstrations. And a tear gas canister went into the window of a house in the refugee camp, and it went into the crib of an infant and burned her to death. When I was there was a man, Rashid Tamimi, in Nabi Saleh, who was killed, he was shot, and killed during the demonstration. And that's the news. But life under the occupation is life without justice, more than anything. Under international law, Israelis have a duty as the occupying power to act as sovereign in the areas that they occupy, but there's no justice for Palestinians who live under the occupation. Every act of theft, every act of harassment, every act of assault, arson, or murder must be investigated and prosecuted under Israeli law. But this doesn't happen. If anything, soldiers and settlers collaborate to make sure that justice is not served. When I was there, we did some work to kind of be observers, not observers, but to be present at a place called Han al-Laban. And Han is a beautiful, beautiful Ottoman house and field. It's at the base of a settlement where there's a spring. And the people who live in that settlement want that spring really, really badly. And they harass the owner, Hollis. They harass him regularly. They don't just harass the man. They've broken into his house. They've ripped everything that he had in there out and thrown it away. They've destroyed his car by beating it. They nearly killed his son and gave him brain damage so he cannot taste or smell. That's settler violence. But it's also a space without justice. Some of my comrades were there, and they were staying at Han, and they needed to go and get some food, because staying at Han at this point has been kind of like gutted out from the settlers. It's kind of like camping. So you gotta like make a fire, and you gotta get some food to go and cook it. So they were walking down the street to like a market, like a gas station. And they were walking back. And when they came back, soldiers came and stopped them and like hassled them and asked them, who are you, what are you doing here, where's your passport, what's your name, blah, 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 being like big, tough guys. And then when they finally get gone, the soldiers go and they can go back to Han, there were all of a sudden like, these phone calls, and Khalid, who owns the land, is calling our international coordinator and calling, and it's like, where are the people? Where are the people? The settlers are here right now. And by the time the people got back to Han, the settlers had gone. So, I mean, we think this is a pretty clear case of settlers and soldiers, because they know one another. Settlers and soldiers collaborating to make sure that, violence can happen, and that justice is obscured. One time I was there at Han, and the settlers could see that we were making improvements on the property, so they came and they started to, take pictures and stand around, and, with their guns and everything, and they're pulling up in big groups, and it's like, I mean, it's kind of weird, you know, you're standing there just doing your thing, and like all of a sudden like a big group of guys come up with guns, and even if they're not waving them in your face, there's still a big group of guys with guns. And you know that they probably got like, you know, your power is that you can stand there and not let them in because you can lock the door to Han. So that's pretty much your power. They're like up on the roof of the house, they're walking around, they're taking pictures in the windows about the improvements that we've made. And we tell Holly, and Holly calls the soldiers because the soldiers have told us that they'll help. And so then the soldiers come out, and just as the soldiers are coming up, like, the settlers go. You know, they're like, okay, we've seen what we wanted to see, we've done what we wanted to do. And then the soldiers stand there, and they harass Holly for another hour. And the tough thing about that was because, I mean, I'm there, and I'm watching it happen, and, you know, I don't know a lot of Arabic, but I know a couple little phrases. And the thing is that those soldiers aren't helping Holland, and they're talking to him in the most patronizing terms. They're like, shwaya, shwaya, ya habibi. Calm down, my darling, calm down, calm down. And you just want to be like, why are you, what? Don't you tell that man to calm down, and don't you talk to him like you care about him. You don't. You don't. Because the crime that's happening is not here. It went right back up the hill to the Malilazona settlement. That's where it went. Why don't you go there? No, that doesn't happen. I realize I'm kind of going long. Sorry, I kind of get carried away. But these things are important to me. But I wanted to share some of these stories and tell you some of these things because I want you to know about them. And when we talk about things like peace, when we talk about things like a roadmap to peace, when we talk about a peace process, you can't talk about those things without understanding a little bit of what life is like under the occupation, about what that kind of apartheid is like, about what that kind of violence is like. And when we talk about things as people who are not Palestinians, about peace or about the importance of having credibility or moral high ground as, you know, as activists or as Palestinians or whatever, or you want to talk about like nonviolence, well, I could support this if it was nonviolent, or I could support people if I knew that they had credibility, that they weren't violent or whatever. And that's to speak in the words of privilege. Because these are words of comfort and luxury. And they're a slap in the face of the reality of daily life of those who live under the occupation. And when you talk about these things, you add another set of authority that Palestinians need to subject themselves to, subjugate themselves to, other than, you add a moral authority to an imperialist authority. And you say they have to do this or that before they can get their most basic human dignities and right of self-determination. And so I think that it's important to talk about peace. Certainly, the Palestinians that I've worked with and lived with and laughed with and got to know talk about peace. They want peace. They just want, like you and me, to live their lives, to be able to be with their families, to travel, to have their businesses, to have peace. It's just what they want. But sometimes when we talk about peace, if we talk about it in a certain way, it becomes a kind of barrier. It becomes yet another kind of cudgel that hits the people that are already being hit. I suppose, you know, I could say some other things. I believe that Palestinians have the right to resist the occupation. And
you have questions?
Yeah, of course you can. I just want to say one more thing now on some of that. Sorry. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Of course you can have questions. I want to say that you should care about the occupation. It's the last thing I want to sum up on. You should care about the occupation, particularly if you care about peace, because it's such an important aspect of what's going on in the world today. You know, I don't know how many of you guys have seen the Civil War, the documentary by Ken Burns. He talks about the way that, like, slavery is just something that sort of bubbled up in the Civil War. That slavery is an issue that was like a snake curled up under the table in the Constitutional Congress. And it reared its head at certain times, up until the Civil War. And it was always there, it was always there. It was just a matter of, like, are we talking about it and how much are we talking about it? And we can see that sort of thing in our history now. We can see it in plain sight with the hindsight of history. But it makes me wonder now why we can't see the importance of the occupation in events that are happening now. The question of Palestine is like the snake curled up under the table of the vast majority of our country's dealings in wars within the Middle East. Of the habit that's created in the Middle East. I mean, oil, yes, sure, fine, certainly, but we cannot escape the pattern of the legacy of Western imperialism and domination in the region. It was begun in the 18th and 19th centuries and was made manifest during the First World War after the fall of the Ottoman Empire in the form of boundary lines and modern states that were drawn by Western powers. And we sit back and we say to ourselves, dude, what's going on in Syria? What? Do you know what's happening there? And we don't see the pattern between Syria, between Lebanon, between Palestine. We don't see the way these things are woven in. We don't see the whole structure of the region and how imperialism has drawn it out, and the trials of imperialism, the occupation, still makes a thorn, still makes a problem for everyone. You know, a little while ago I was listening to something about Syria on the news, and I thought it was interesting. It sparked up my thoughts. Because just like 2 weeks ago, you know, our government was trying to push war in Syria by saying, oh, it's ethnic tensions, or it's religious tensions, it's all sorts of rival factions, it's terrorists versus dictators, it's all those things. And when the government's trying to push that, right, I hear this news story, a report about a village where the Syrian army had been dropping, there had been like ethnic discord in that village. And they were going to report the Syrian army dropping off guns and just sort of leaving them in the middle of the square. Just, you know, like, hey, you want to start up some ethnic violence? Here's some guns, y'all. And nobody took it up. Nobody took it up because everybody knew it was a bad idea. And so this reporter was there and he was talking to these people. And at one point, one person, I believe it was a Christian, you know, like, takes the hand of his fellow villagers and starts singing a song, and everybody starts joining. And the song that he sings is Unadikum. And Unadikum goes, Unadikum, Shudhula Yalikum Wabusul Arda, Takhayalikum Wakulikum, which means I call you, I clasp your hands, I kiss the ground under your feet, and I say, I offer my life for yours. And this is the song of Palestinian resistance. And so the people in Syria that you're trying to be told are fighting one another because of ethnic tensions or because of religious tensions, and that's what it is. It's another crazy back since biblical conflict that you'll never understand. That's a lie. Look at what the people who are there are telling you. And if one of the ways that they're saying that they get along is something that's based on something that we can stop, well, I think that the outcome should be clear. Palestine is important, and I think the occupation is important, because to live on a foundation of oppression is to build upon a house of sand, and to recognize and acknowledge the ways that we benefit from the oppression of others is no shame if we work to dismantle and to smash the structures that perpetrate that oppression. And I just want to say that my heart's with Palestine, and my heart's with you all for coming and listening to me, and thank you very much. I'll take your questions.